So this is the last session, session 5, PFAS risk, treatment, and disposal. We get some great presentations for you. Right before we get started, just wanted to give a thank you to Gene. This has been a great conference. I hope everybody's had a chance to talk to all the different folks that we have here and make some good connections moving forward to help continue PFAS investigation and research and help us make the connections we need. All right, so let's get started. The first one we're going to have is Jenny Olmsted. She's a professional engineer with CDM Smith, and she's going to talk about mitigation strategies for PFAS and stormwater. All right, Jenny.
Thank you, everybody, for still hanging on for this last session. Now, if you guys could raise your hand if you have ever looked at a stormwater treatment session and said, "Wow, I know there's PFAS in there." Anyone? Okay, yeah, I hope it's not just me. So today I will discuss non-traditional PFAS sources, gain a big picture understanding of PFAS treatment, hear about current stormwater management practices, and then wrap up with 3 real-world case studies. So today I will discuss general management approaches to PFAS-impacted stormwater and present real-world case studies. First, I will discuss non-traditional PFAS sources. Next, I will provide a high-level overview of PFAS treatment technologies. Then I will focus on how to manage PFASs in stormwater. And finally, I will walk through 3 case studies that apply the concept of what I have discussed. Now let's jump right into it. One important component of designing an effective treatment system is understanding upstream sources. If upstream sources are not well understood and controlled, then downstream treatment may not be as effective. For these reasons, I'm going to briefly review 3 non-traditional PFAS sources that may be overlooked even though contribute PFAS mass to the stormwater system. The first non-traditional PFAS source I want to talk about is piping. Fluorine has high electronegativity, which imparts a rigid helical fluorocarbon structure to perfluoroalkyl groups, leading to the formation of bulky, rigid, rod-shaped fluorosurfactant tails. The bulky, rigid, rod shape of the perfluoroalkyl chains tends to decrease the curvature of the aggregates that they form in solution based on observations summarized in the Handbook of Fluorist Chemistry published in 2004. This result is the strong tendency to form vesicles and lamellar phases instead of micelles. The extreme hydrophobic interactions developed by the perfluoroalkyl chains cause fluorosurfactants to segregate, self-assemble, and collect in an orderly fashion on interfaces. Researchers have directly observed this under a microscope in fire suppression pipes, which you can see with the photos on this slide. From CDM Smith's work decontaminating fire trucks and fire suppression system, we've seen that these PFAS films can be extremely difficult to remove. If decontamination isn't done thoroughly and properly, these films can remain behind and continue acting as continuing sources. CDM Smith is also funding research on PFAS supramolecular structures to further understand the conditions that these form in. As we hypothesize, these potentially can be present in concrete structures and conveyance piping that have been impacted with AFFF if dispensed repeatedly before dilution with rainfall. Second, the non-traditional PFAS source I want to talk about is concrete. Building off of what we just discussed about PFAS supramolecular structures, research has shown PFASs can readily absorb to concrete and self-assemble. Then, during rain events, the PFASs that are closest to the surface comes back into the contact with rainfall events, often with peak concentrations within the first 10 minutes. Also, modeling studies suggest this process can continue for decades and even in some cases centuries after the original PFAS release. Depth profiles of PFAS in concrete have also been completed and show a sharp drop in PFAS mass after the first one seen at below ground surface. The last non-traditional PFAS source I want to mention is from rain itself. Some types of PFASs and their precursors have shown to be volatile and subject to atmospheric transport over short, medium, and long-range distances. This is one of the primary reasons we are seeing PFASs in remote environments like the Arctic. Rainfall then distributes these atmospheric PFASs back to the earth, since rainfall is one of the most effective mechanisms for scattering atmospheric pollutants. Many studies have completed and documented quantifiable PFASs in rain, which are summarized on this slide by state. Some states, like Florida, luckily, have generally observed lower concentrations compared to other states. Now that we're familiar with some non-traditional PFAS sources that are important to consider when characterizing and designing stormwater treatment systems, let's briefly high-level review the state of the science of PFAS treatment technologies. And it's always good to go back to class and review at the end of the conference. So when we take a step back and look at PFAS treatment technologies in general, the approach is fairly consistent. Most treatment strategies focus on first separating and concentrating PFAS into a smaller liquid stream. Once you have that concentrated PFAS stream, you then apply some form of destruction technology to break down the PFAS compounds. Examples of separate and concentration destruction technologies are shown on this slide. One key takeaway is no single technology can do it all. Field scale pilots are increasingly using treatment trains. When it comes to treating PFAS in solids, the approach tends to be much more familiar and aligns closely with how we manage other types of contaminants. At a high level, there are three main strategies, which are also summarized on this slide: bind in place, cover to prevent leaching exposure, and dig it up. It's important to keep in mind, though, that none of these technologies destroy PFAS. Destruction typically only occurs when material is excavated and treated like what we just heard in one of our talks, and through thermal, supercritical, or smoldering processes. So hey, good news, we wrapped up our class on reviewing high-level PFAS technology treatments. With that foundation in place, we can now dive deeper into how PFAS is actually managed in stormwater systems and start talking about how some of the more novel treatment strategies being used today. When we think about managing PFAS-impacted stormwater, the options generally fall into three categories, which you can see summarized on this slide. They are ordered from what is typically the most efficient and cost-effective to the least. The first option is source control. This means identifying the sources that contribute to the most PFAS to a stormwater stream and addressing those sources directly. Examples include contaminated solids within a watershed or sediments that have accumulated in a stormwater management basin. The second option is to optimize existing processes. Here, the focus is on evaluating the current stormwater management system and identifying opportunities to reduce PFAS without installing new treatment. That could include improving drainage, capturing runoff before it mixes with the main stormwater system, and implementing good housekeeping techniques, such as preventing spills, improving storage, and enhancing cleaning procedures. The third option is capture and treat stormwater directly. This involves installing treatment systems designed to remove PFAS from stormwater runoff before it migrates downstream to other water bodies. While effective, this option is often the most complex and costly compared to controlling sources and optimizing existing infrastructure. With this framework in place, the next few slides focus on treatment techniques that can be applied directly to stormwater runoff and stormwater management systems that our PFAS impacts can be fully addressed through source control or optimization alone. One approach that's being explored is enhancing foam generation within stormwater systems. As we discussed earlier, surfactant PFAS naturally concentrate at interfaces. By modifying existing stormwater structures to generate additional foam, that foam can then be captured, helping remove PFAS from the flowing surface water. Foam production can be enhanced in a few ways, including the addition of organic material and increased aeration through system structures. The important note here is that this is a phase change process. By aerating the water and producing foam, PFAS is concentrated or volatilized at that location rather than continuing to migrate further downstream. One of the most widely used passive treatment options for stormwater is rain gardens and biofilters, which can be retrofitted with biochar and GAC to favor the uptake of PFASs. Rain gardens are shallow, vegetated depressions, often built along natural slopes, that temporarily collect and infiltrate stormwater runoff. Most of the time, they're dry, and they only hold water after rain events. Biofilters are similar in that concept, but are typically more engineered treatment beds that support biological active media and vegetation. The conceptual diagram on the slide shows how the systems work. Stormwater first enters sedimentation or pretreatment area, then flows into a amended media layer where biochar or GSC has been incorporated, and finally drains out through an underdrain so the system doesn't remain saturated. One of our colleagues at CDM Smith learned that PFAS removal in these systems can further be enhanced for PFAS by maintaining unsaturated conditions to maintain that air-water interface. Construction wetlands are another approach being studied for PFAS removal from stormwater runoff. Similar to the previous study, these engineered systems use plants selected for the uptake of PFAS through the root systems. This slide shows general types of construction wetlands with a diagram of how each wetland is different. Key considerations for constructed wetlands include site conditions, plant selection, long-term maintenance, and the management of ecological risks. It's also important to recognize that PFAS, again, is not destroyed in these systems. Instead, it accumulates in the wetland vegetation, meaning that any plant removal or harvesting has to be managed appropriately. Some research also suggests that constructed wetlands can facilitate advanced oxidation reactions within the root systems, largely mediated by fungal enzymes. These processes may lead to precursor transformation and limited defluorination, although these mechanisms are still being studied and isn't universally accepted. A related option is constructed floating wetlands, which can be used to treat PFAS-impacted stormwater. Floating wetlands generally require less upfront construction and less space than traditional constructed wetlands, while offering more flexibility in placement, maintenance, and plant replacement. Many of the same concepts I just discussed for constructed wetlands still apply. However, traditional challenges remain, such as achieving sufficient residence time, managing disease and pests, and accounting for regional climate conditions. At CDM Smith, we've implemented floating wetlands for general stormwater management, and one practical challenge was that the fish and wildlife kept eating our plants. And so we had to eventually install a barrier system to have this plant survive for them to do their job. Finally, what may be the most effective for a given stormwater system is a treatment train approach that combines multiple concepts we've addressed today. This slide shows an example from the literature with the reference listed on this slide. Where aeration is used to generate foam, the foam is captured with an adsorption mat, and treatment is further enhanced using a construction floating wetland. These layered approaches recognize that no single technology solves everything, and that combining process is often necessary to meet site-specific goals. Now, let's turn to a few case studies that demonstrate how PFAS-impacted stormwater is being managed in practice. I do want to note that I have significantly simplified these case studies for today, given the time we have, and I want to emphasize that a substantial amount of work has gone into each of them. The first case study I want to share comes from an airport located in the Midwestern United States. At this site, stormwater runoff from the property was found to contain elevated PFAS concentrations. Follow-up investigations were completed to better understand where these PFASs were coming from. And the results pointed to a localized area of contaminated soils as a primary contributor to PFASs in the runoff. The objective of this pilot study was to reduce PFAS leaching from those soils into stormwater by targeting the topsoils and the shallow clay layers that were most directly affected with the runoff. For this pilot, Remediation was selected as a treatment amendment. It was blended into the shallow wells at a 2.5% ratio with the goal of immobilizing PFASs through absorption. The conceptual graphic shown on this slide gives a general layout of the pilot. 3 test cells labeled A, B, C were constructed, each measuring 20 feet by 30 feet. Test cell A serves as the control with no treatment. Test cell B was mixed with Remediation to a depth of 6 inches and representing shallow mixing. Test cell C received deeper mixing, with Remediation incorporated into 8 inches below ground surface. A trench drain was installed down gradient of the test cells to capture stormwater runoff after it flowed across the treated soils. Performance samples were collected in the discharge pipe at the end of the trench drain. Baseline runoff samples were collected before treatment, and implementation was completed in late 2024. And post-treatment sampling was completed following a rainfall event. The next few slides show the results. Starting with test cell A, the control. You can see the log scale graph that the PFAS concentrations in runoff did not change following implementation. Concentration is on the y-axis, and the dates of sampling are on the x-axis. This result was to be expected because no treatment occurred. The next graph shows results for test cell B. Mixing Rembine into the top 6 inches of soil resulted in a 97.8% reduction in PFAS concentrations in the runoff. However, despite that reduction, concentrations still remained relatively high, with a total target PFAS measured approximately at 2,700 nanograms per liter. Total target PFAS in this case is the sum of the PFAS measured in EPA method 1633 with a non-detect set to 0. Finally, test cell C showed the greatest performance. Mixing Rembine to a depth of 18 inches resulted in the largest reduction in PFAS concentrations. Total target PFAS decreased from greater than 100,000 nanograms per liter to approximately 1,160 nanograms per liter. That corresponds to an overall reduction in 99%. In summary, the pilot demonstrates that for the site conditions and geology, incorporating an adsorptive amendment at greater depths was the most effective approach for reducing PFAS concentrations in stormwater. The next two case studies I'll walk through have only been implemented within the past few months. Because of that, we don't have performance data to show. However, if anyone's interested, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to share the results once we get a few months of sampling data. The second case study is another example of source control, this time at a fire training center located in the northeastern United States. At this site, stormwater runoff drains directly into a drinking water reservoir where PFOA and PFAS concentrations are right at the federal maximum contaminant level of 4 parts per trillion. Because of that, the client wanted to be proactive and reduce PFAS inputs upstream with the long-term goal of keeping the reservoir concentrations below the federal MCLs. The primary objective of this project was to identify the dominant PFAS sources associated with fire training activities and implement a remedy that would reduce PFAS loading into the drinking water reservoir after rain events and training operations. As you can see on the site map on this slide, the facility includes 2 large concrete training pads, each approximately 8 inches thick. The pads are fully curbed and guttered and designed to route runoff through a concrete conveyance system into a sedimentation basin. From there, a sealing well and pipe convey water from the sedimentation basin directly into the drinking water reservoir. Interviews with site personnel indicated that PFAS-containing Class B AFFF was historically sprayed onto the concrete pads and training towers during simulated emergencies, with minimal application to the adjacent grassed and forested areas. With that information, we developed a conceptual site model to understand where PFAS was coming from and which sources were contributing to the most to stormwater impacts. We reviewed time series surface water data collected at the sedimentation basin outlet dating back to 2021. As shown on the graph on this lower left of the slide, PFAS concentrations fluctuated from near 0 to more than 200 nanograms per liter, while PFOA ranged from near 0 up to 150 nanograms per liter throughout the years until present day. We also characterized sediment thickness in the basin and collected sediment samples. Soil sample was also completed near HFF storage areas to evaluate potential contamination for historical spills and leaks. We also characterized upstream sources, which included both simulated flushing and wet weather sampling within the conveyance system. Simulated flush samples were collected during dry weather by placing a fire hose into the higher elevation storm drains and waiting until flow was observed at the basin outlet. Samples were collected at each drain. These results are shown as the turquoise graduated cylinders on the site map. Wet weather samples were also collected at each storm drain after a rainfall event and looked similar to simulated flush samples. In addition, concrete hose down sampling was performed to evaluate whether PFAS was leaching directly from the concrete itself. 7 locations at the training pads were selected based on interview information of where AFFF was applied the greatest. The highest total PFAS concentration from the hose down runoff equaled about 329 nanograms per liter, which was west of the primary training tower and aligned with our interviews. Based on the conceptual site model, we concluded that the conveyance system infrastructure and basin sediments were the primary PFAS sources contributing to PFAS and stormwater impacts. The facility did not want to address the concrete pads directly due to the potential disruptions to training activities. So we evaluated alternatives based on the conveyance system and sedimentation basin. A feasibility study was completed with alternatives summarized in this table. Alternative 1 was no action and served as the baseline. Alternative 2 included clean out of the conveyance system, cured in place pipe to seal the concrete piping, installation of a sediment cap, monitor natural attenuation, and ongoing monitoring. This was the most expensive option at approximately $600,000. Alternative 3 was similar to, but excluded the cured in place piping, which significantly reduced costs to approximately $185,000. Alternative 4 consists of moderate natural recovery and monitoring only. After discussions with stakeholders, Alternative 3 was selected for implementation. Construction was completed between late 2025 and early 2026, and the photos on this slide show key steps of the implementation. An unreactive bentonite-based impermeable aggregate material was placed directly over soft sediments with a minimum design thickness of 4 inches. Material was not installed on vegetated fringes or above the waterline. No armoring layer was installed as it was deemed unnecessary given the lack of basin activities such as boating or swimming. Also, the cap was installed without dewatering to maintain sedimentation basin primary function. Cap thickness was verified through surveyed elevations and physical coring and probing. The challenges included soft ground conditions that limited equipment access to the basin banks and also achieving even distribution of the cap material. One key takeaway from this project is that understanding where PFAS is coming from and which media matter most is essential for designing effective remedies, particularly when you have to balance access limitations, practicality, and cost. Next steps for the site are to monitor remedy performance over the coming year. The last case study I'll present today is an ongoing Department of Defense funded research and development project in the southeastern United States. The story here will probably sound very familiar. Historical AFFF releases continue to mobilize PFAS into the surrounding environment during rain events. In some cases, source areas can't be clearly identified and they can't practically be remediated. When this happens, the remaining option is to capture and treat stormwater runoff before it leaves the site. This approach comes with several challenges. Stormwater flow rates are highly variable and directly tied to rainfall. Water quality is often poor and inconsistent, and stormwater management features are frequently located in remote areas of the property with limited access to power. So to address these challenges, we determined that an engineered precast concrete vault system capable of passively diverting, capturing, and treating stormwater runoff would be the most practical solution. The system needs enough hydraulic head to operate passively, which makes stormwater retention ponds with a weir-controlled outfalls a good fit. Once water overtops the weir, it can be routed into the treatment system without pumps. The design shown on the slide illustrates the overall system layout. Stormwater enters the system through a sloped trench drain equipped with a filter fabric. From there, it passes through a butterfly shutoff valve, an effluent sampling port, an electromagnetic flow meter, and a butterfly flow control valve before entering the precast treatment vault. Inside the vault, water first passes through a trash basket and additional fabric filter, then moves upward through media baskets in a bottom-up flow regime. After treatment, the stormwater exits the vault through another electromagnetic flow meter and an effluent sampling port before discharging back into the spillway. The vault also includes an overflow pipe in case the trash basket or the media is clogged, and the system was designed with capability to backwash the treatment media if necessary. The media baskets contain 6 inches of antimicrobial media and 12 inches of ion exchange resin to support PFAS removal. Sensors and probes are located throughout the system and collect data every 10 minutes, including influent and effluent flow rates. The system was installed in April 2026 and is currently in the startup phase. The plan is to complete 12 months of performance monitoring. Lastly, to borrow a quote from the movie Spy Kids, if everyone knows that movie, we're only as good as our gadgets, but in this case, I mean data. We're collecting system data every 10 minutes, and that information is compiled into a spreadsheet that's emailed to us daily at 6 a.m. Rather than stopping there, we decide to move beyond spreadsheets. This project leverages Microsoft Power Automate and Power BI to automate the intake of daily email-delivered spreadsheets into an interactive dashboard. A Power Automate workflow triggers when the daily email arrives, extracts the spreadsheet, and saves it to a SharePoint folder. Power BI then reads that folder on a routine schedule and automatically updates the dashboard. The slide shows a few pages of that dashboard, including a system summary and interactive time plots. Users can adjust the data range, and the statistical summaries, tables, and flow rate charts update automatically. This is a critical operational awareness. If influent and effluent flow rates don't match, it's an immediate indicator that the media or trash basket may be clogging, allowing for us to quickly mobilize. The dashboard also tracks telemetry battery levels, which are solar charged, helping us to identify equipment issues before data collection is interrupted. Additionally, interactive time series plots allows users to compare sensors across different systems. For example, we can look at the pond water level sensor above the weir alongside the influent flow rates. If the pond is overtopping the weir but influent flow is low or absent, that's a clear sign that intake must be instructed. Leveraging automation is especially important for stormwater treatment systems because of the transient nature of runoff and the operational challenges involved. It reduces time spent on administrative tasks and allows for faster interpretation of system operation. The system is now fully operational, and we're preparing to collect our first round of influent and effluent data. In conclusion, today I've discussed non-traditional PFAS sources, reviewed PFAS treatment approaches, outlined management practice for PFAS-impacted stormwater, and shared 3 case studies showing how PFAS-impacted stormwater is being managed in the real world. I hope that listening to my talk today sparks some ideas for what we can be done if you find yourself facing stormwater contaminated in PFAS. Even though we work for different companies or represent different agencies, at the end of the day, we're all on the same planet, facing many of the same challenges. The world is big, the pollution doesn't stop at boundaries, and solving these problems, we have to work together. Thank you.
All right, great job. Thank you, Jenny. All right, so we're going to move on to our second presentation now, which is closed loop PFAS destruction with hydrothermal alkaline treatment, HALT, at an Air Force base. Daniel Nelson and Emily Harper are going to give that presentation. Thank you.
I'm too tall for this microphone. Great. Good morning. Thanks for sticking around with us today. We're glad to be here. We appreciate the invitation to speak and the organizers. It's been a great event. I'm on the verge of losing my voice, so pardon me for that. I hope it sticks with us for the duration of this presentation. I'm Daniel, Sales Director at Aquagga. This is my second time here at the PFAS Forum in Florida. I had a great experience last year and decided to fly across the country again. For that, it was a long journey, but I brought a friend with me, Emily Harper, field technician at Aquagga. It's a really great opportunity to hear from her today to talk about our demonstration project at a Department of War site, closed loop with foam fractionation, HALT, in a very ambitious demonstration project. So it'll be great to hear from someone who actually walks the walk and destroys PFAS on a daily basis. So I'm really excited to have her with me today. I'm going to try to keep the commercial bits snappy and not talk too long. So our presentation is divided into 3 sections. I'm going to give some corporate updates. It's always of interest, and we know that with the latest EPA guidance that came out, people are interested in the readiness levels and the commercial readiness of different emerging technologies. So I wanted to give you all the very latest on that. I'm going to then switch gears and talk about a little bit more about HALT technology. We had a great presentation earlier in the conference from supercritical water oxidation. So a bit of the distinguishing factors between that and hydrothermal alkaline treatment. And then I've got a video tour of the inside of one of our systems. So this would be as if you were out in Tacoma, Washington, visiting us and taking a tour. This is what you'd see. So I'm excited to share that. And then I'm going to hand it quickly over to Emily to do the case study from the closed loop treatment process. So that's our plan. A bit of background. Aquagga makes hydrothermal alkaline treatment systems. So on the map, and Jenny presented it just now, there's a list of destruction techs. We're one of them. Aquagga holds the exclusive license to the original HALT patent from the Colorado School of Mines. So we're the sole vendor of HALT. So if you see HALT, it's Aquagga throughout the industry. We've been a company for about 6 or 7 years. We've gone through the rigorous EPA and DOD technical development and validation process that many of the technologies have gone through, culminating in a potential success memo at the end of the DIU ESTCP program earlier this year. We have been mentioned in the latest 2026 interim guidance from the EPA and the DOD or the DOW interim guidance as well. We make commercial ready systems. This is our middle size one. It's a 10-foot container. We have a palletized size one, goes on a 4x4 foot pallet. That's being shipped off to a demonstration project. It's already there, but it's in California next week. 2 of these systems are going to industrial clients this year. We'll be delivering them in the next 6 months or so, one to North America and then one to Europe. And then we are in the design and build phase of our full scale size, which is a 20-foot container. So we've got 20-foot container, 10-foot container, pallet size systems that are ready for order. That full scale one, I'm pleased to say, will be set up first in Colorado for our first permitted, permanent PFAS destruction site outside of Denver. So we've contracted with the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, CDPHE, for their AFFF take-back program, destroying up to 40,000 gallons of foam concentrate in the state of Colorado. And it's an interesting anecdote about AFFF and that project is because I was here at this conference last year and ended up meeting of our subcontractor partner from Colorado. So a guy from Colorado, a guy from Washington in Orlando, and we ended up hashing out our draft scope of work out by the swimming pool here and ended up with a contract. So it was a really great experience and nostalgic for me to be back here at the PFAS Forum. So we will be destroying, that project is underway in Colorado. We are in the planning phases. We've got our subcontract agreements done, permitting phase right now. We will be collecting AFFF later this year and starting destruction on site in 2027 and 2028. So that project is underway, and that's partially funding the full-scale build of our commercial HALT systems. Another update is I wanted to point out that our number one application at Aquagga is industrial wastewater. The complex wastewater processes matrices, either with high salts or co-solvents, high PFAS concentrations, including short and ultra-short chain. Like these sort of nasty wastewater streams are our bread and butter. And we have recently released a paper in conjunction with 3M Company discussing an on-site demonstration project we did with them at one of their sites here in the United States, where we not only tested the limits of HALT system, achieved near 100% fluorine mass balance, but then also characterized the fate of the fluorine throughout the entire process. So we'll have a QR code at the end of our talk. You can get that paper, or if you want the PDF without the paywall, you can let me know and I'll send it to you. As mentioned, I'm going to change gears a little bit here and just explain a bit more about HALT, how we use our process to destroy PFAS in a variety of different liquid matrices. So this is a bit of a refresher. It's kind of similar to the diagram we saw for supercritical water oxidation, but then we hang out in the subcritical state of water, which is below that orange dot and that where that star is on the diagram. So we treat liquid PFAS, so we don't do solids. We don't deal with TSS or other suspended solids in the water. It's a liquid treatment fully. We work in the temperatures of somewhere between 350 to 370 degrees Celsius typically, 3,000 PSI, and then we add in a liquid alkaline amendment, typically sodium hydroxide, but it can be potassium hydroxide depending on the application. So those are the levers that we pull to tune our systems and to tune our process for the different types of destruction applications that we're doing. As you all know, the matrices that we would receive for these, which would include concentrates from landfill leachate, AFFF foam concentrate, industrial wastewater, which might be an RO reject or a regeneration brine from ion exchange resin. They're messy. They've got lots of co-constituents, and they also have a variety of PFAS types. And so we basically tune the temperature and the pH of the incoming feedstock for our systems in order to meet the destruction goals of the client and any regulatory requirements. So HALT has been documented over the last 5 to 10 years extensively. We're pretty confident in its ability to treat PFAS. Like for us, that's not a question. The questions we get now from clients are you commercially ready? Can you handle our situation? Or how can we make it cheaper? Or what pre-treatment do you need or post-treatment in order for us to comply with our discharge? So we're moving into this more commercial kind of operational phase. That's the theory. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I'm forgetting about it. Oh yeah, our effluent. Our effluent, so we have liquid in, liquid out. It's continuous flow system. The different sizes range from about 20 gallons a day for the little tiny palletized system up through 1,200 to 1,500 gallons per day for the full-scale system. And so it's liquid in, liquid out. We produce a salty brine. So the organofluorines have been completely mineralized and converted into inorganic sodium fluoride dissolved in our solution. The other constituents in the water are either sodium carbonate or other dissolved salts in the water, and then water. Those are the products. So after our process, we reduce the pH, we neutralize it, and prepare it either for safe disposal, discharge to the POTW, or ideally recirculation back to the top of the treatment works. And if you want more details on that plan, Emily's going to be discussing that during the case study. Here's what the system looks like in practice. So this is our latest system. We're going to go inside the box, which is really a special opportunity. I know when I've seen a lot of presentations of destructive techs, and you kind of wonder how it actually works. But I'm hoping to give you a tour of where the water flows and what the components are of our system, and I think you'll be surprised that it's quite a simple design. Cue the video. There's no sound. It's just me. So you open the doors, and there's the HALT system in there. It takes up about half the container. Those are the influent connections here. The feedstock that's been amended with Alkaline goes into that silver tank there. That's just a holding tank, leveling tank for the pump. We get fresh water. That's for system heat up and rinsing of our system. All of that's controlled by valves. Goes into the pipes. And then it enters the high pressure system through an industrial diaphragm pump. Quite a big pump in there, you can see. Again, we're pumping it into about 3,000 PSI into the high pressure system. It then goes up through the pipes. I swear it's only a 2-minute video. It goes up into the temperature zone where we've got recuperative heat exchangers that raise the temperature and cool it down. After it runs through this insulated tube at the top, that's the hydrothermal reactor, and that's where the PFAS destruction mechanism takes place. The liquid sloshing through the pipes and comes out the back end. This is the exterior of the system. You can see we've got power connections, networking connections, both wired and wireless. I'm going to move our way through here. Am I leaving you enough time? Okay. The system's controlled by an off-the-shelf PLC with a touch screen. You can see some of the functions there. It's system turn on, heat up, chemical mix, sampling, all those kinds of things. We have remote monitoring capabilities. And then just around you can see where the hoses that connect into the system. Again, we take a chemical amended influent, liquid influent, we process it, we have automatic clean in place procedures. So there's clean in place fluid inlet there, we have our effluent connection, and then we have the high pressure gas line that is part of controlling the pressure in the system. And with that, I want to save some time for Emily to talk through our case study.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Dan said, I'm Emily Harper. I'm a field technician at Aquagga. And a little background about me, been with Aquagga for about a year, worked on a number of projects, influent being from leachate, groundwater, and then this one we have some EFFF impacted water. For this particular project, we wanted to implement a closed loop treatment train between foam fractionation and HALT. A couple of our project goals we wanted to achieve, I know we've all heard this number, the 4 nanograms per liter. We want to achieve that, hit those MCLs. We also wanted to validate a closed loop integration between the foam fractionation and the HALT technology. How easy is it to implement and set up? Achieve those 90% PFAS removal for foam fractionation, and then also 90% removal for HALT itself, and then evaluate like mobilization on site for me, make my job easier. Let's look at a high overview of what closed loop and our fluid flow looked like. So we started with 10,000 gallons of the HFFF impacted water. It was about 5 ppm. It was then sent to foam fractionation. Foam frac concentrated it to about 200 gallons, and it was over 1,000 ppm per batch. That was then sent to HALT, got to destroy some PFAS there, and then the actual closed loop is just the circulation from foam frac down to HALT. Did that a couple of times, and then sent it through GAC. We put GAC there on the end. We wanted to be sure to hit that ambitious goal of the 4 nanograms per liter. And then safe to discharge. Let's see a picture of site. There we go, South Dakota. I'm going to point out a couple of things here. We have staff container right here, foam fractionate on the right, HALT in the center, and then on the far left, that blue container is a frac tank. So kind of how things worked on site, we have 2 operators and remote operations as well. Everything was connected, so it was pretty easy to just have the fluid kind of turn through everything. Now we have some results. I'm going to talk a little bit about the independent technologies, foam frac, our HALT, and then also what the actual closed loop blending really looked like. So overall, total PFAS destruction was 90%, really good, exciting. And then those longer chains, actually we saw an increase in destruction of 99%. So something a little bit in particular about this HFFF, the concentration of longer chains, it was 64%, so it was a higher concentration of those. However, going into the project, I know you can kind of see those shorter chains were a little bit stubborn to harness, and we did know this. Foam frac does have a little bit of a trouble getting those shorter chains with the air-water partitioning. So, and then also we have that GAC right there on the end again, trying to hit the 4 nanograms per liter, and as you can see, it helped to remove PFAS as well. Let's look at HALT. There we go. Okay, For HALT, across all of the cycles, we were able to hit 99.8% destruction at the very least. We got 99.9 as well for the second batch right there. Across the treatment train, it was 1,000 times concentration per cycle, so we were able to harness more PFAS throughout. And then HALT, what is introduced into HALT actually is independent for destruction. So if those shorter chains were introduced to HALT, we would have been able to destroy them. Okay, and then the actual closed loop aspect of this project. Explain this graph a little bit. We have before and after blending. So before blending is going to be that initial foam frac to HALT, just one run destruction, and then the after blending was the recirculation through with the 3 batches itself. So we got 10 times concentration factor with the blending, so basically displaying that we were able to concentrate more PFAS with more cycles. We do believe, because like with literature and things, foam fractionation does better if the effluent is saltier, and thankfully HALT effluent is very salty. So the foam frac was introduced to HALT. HALT was able to destroy it with its salty brine, destroy the PFAS in itself, and then just be reintroduced, and then those PFAS that weren't harnessed initially were sent through again. So basically, we're able to help reduce the chain link dependencies of the foam fractionation with helping with this closed loop cycle. There we go. Some outcomes of our project. We were able to hit quite a few of our goals. The coupled treatment train, easy mobilization. It was pretty easy for me. It was nice having like all the techs very close, really good communication and things like that. Validate that the actual closed loop implementation of the treatment train did something, which we were able to see that with blending, we were able to harness more PFAS and destroy more PFAS. And then also demonstrate on site that it's cost competitive. So with our treatment train and our operational data, we took like electricity, all of our chemical, and then also like operator implementation and things like that, and it is cost competitive, which is exciting. Dan can talk to you a little bit more about that though. And then lastly, do we hit those MCLs? So for the 2 long chains that we looked at, the PFOA, we were able to hit almost non-detect with that 1 nanogram per liter, which is really exciting. And then with our PFAS, we, again, to reiterate, the 5 ppm is what we started at for that HFFF, and then it was concentrated to over 1,000 ppm. So we were still able to hit very, very low ppms of 87 nanograms per liter. Then there's a lovely picture of me there on site. And then here we have the end of our presentation, a couple of QR codes. The 3M demonstration that Dan referenced earlier is this one right here on the right, and then also a specification sheet for that stampede that Dan referenced as well. I'll let you guys go ahead and take a picture. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Daniel and Emily. That was very interesting. Now we're going to do our third and final presentation. It's going to be encapsulation of PFAS in landfill leachate, forming an alternative daily cover by Paul Ruehl. Thank you.
I too am too tall for this microphone, Daniel, so I'll do this. Thank you for sticking to the bitter end. I have to make one of 2 assumptions. Either you really want to hear what I have to say, or your flight doesn't leave till this afternoon and you got no place else to go. I'll try to make it interesting for you. This May 1st past, I guess celebrated 49 years as an environmental chemist. I know what you're thinking. How can a guy that young have 49 years experience? Well, there's a little known tidbit I'd like to share with you. In 1970, when the EPA formed, very quietly, the state of Michigan changed its child labor laws, allowing you to become an environmental professional once you've completed the 5th grade. That's my story, and I am sticking to it. My experience has been in heavy industry. I'm a chemist by training, bench chemist. And I started off in the steel industry, and then after 4 years of that, I jumped into the cement industry. And since 1981, I have been in the cement industry. Usually, I am proud to say, in 45 years of being in the cement industry, I never made the stuff. I never sold the stuff, and not at least in a traditional way. Never paved a road, never did a bridge deck, never made a parking bumper. I've always been the environmental guy. And in 1982, I was approached by a contractor, and he said, "You got any off-spec cement?" Little known secret, a lot of cement plants have off-spec cement. I said, "Sure, what do you want to do with it?" He said, "Well, I got this gun range, got a lot of lead in it. It's EP Tox." Anybody remember EP Tox? EP Tox for lead. It was at Fort Custer in Michigan, and it was hazardous. And he said, "I want to stabilize the soil." I said, "Well, what's that?" Here I am, 48 years later, and about 500 contaminated sites under my belt. I now have finally understood what it means to use cement products for solidification, stabilization, ISS, all sorts of other acronyms that we all live and die with. But this story, oh, by the way, they got me still in geocycle. The glorious news is January 1st, I retired from corporate America. No more spreadsheets for proposed projects, anticipated sales for next year. Can I get an amen? If you don't have to do that anymore. So all I do, I have been retained by my previous employer. It used to be known as Wholesome. I don't know if anybody knew the name Wholesome. I started with the company, it was Lafarge, it became Lafarge Wholesome, then it became Wholesome, and now it's Amrise. But it's the same company. And since they never replaced me, I'm doing just project work for them. It is so glorious, my friends, when all you got to do is the fun stuff. And so this project started about 9 years ago. I formed my own company. It's called PET Soil, P-E-T for PFAS Encapsulation Technology. PET by itself, somebody already had, so I had to tack on soil. So it's PET Soil, is who I'm actually employed by now, and that would be me. And but when I was approached on this, I was still with Geocycle, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Amrise and all those other companies that I said before. But this started about 9 years ago with a friend at lunch. I have started an organization of my own. It's called the Old Guy Network. You got to be at least 60 years old, got to have at least 35 years of experience, and I got a guy. If I need an air quality, I got a guy. If I need a landfill question, I got a guy. Well, I happen to be their guy when it comes to solidifying crud and slop and goop. I'm a chemist. I will use technical terms like that. I know there's a lot of engineers in the room here. But as chemists, trust me, in the lab, we use the terms goop, slop, and crud an awful lot when we're getting that type of material in. And a friend of mine said, "Paul, what do you know about PFAS?" And in about 45 seconds, I said, I don't know, Teflon, Scotchgard, AFFF foam. And 9 years later, and one patent under my belt for the encapsulation of this stuff, I know a whole lot more about PFAS than I did 9 years ago. And this story right here is about a landfill in western Michigan. And what my friend was, he was an engineer for this landfill. And this was their output, 100,000 gallons a day of raw leachate, every day. They were running it through an RO system, which reduced the volume of contaminated water, and it concentrated everything, not just the PFAS. All the ugly nasties that were in the raw leachate got concentrated into 10,000 gallons. And the 90,000 gallons was discharged with an NPDES permit into a local river. He said, "Can you encapsulate that?" Of course, we're from the state of Michigan. He's my friend. You know, you say things to friends you wouldn't say in public, but I'll say it now. I'm retired. I don't care. I said, "Paul, I could encapsulate all of Lake Michigan if you gave me enough cement." He said, "Well, I don't need you to do that. I need 10,000 gallons a day." And I said, "Well, I can do that." And he said, "Well, I need to encapsulate PFAS because they're taking that 10,000 gallons and recirculating it right back into the landfill. And over time, you just have this non-ending loop, non-ending loop, non-ending loop." He said, "I'd like to break that loop." And my first challenge was, could you encapsulate 10,000 gallons in what we called a glump technology? You just make a slurry, pour it into the landfill and let it set up. But it's taking up airspace. When you do glump technology, you are filling up airspace that the landfill could otherwise sell to receive waste. So we got further talking about it, and I said, well, how about, sometimes it's good to have a different pair of eyes. I come from the cement industry. I wasn't really a landfill guy, but I said, well, why do you, I mean, I knew about daily covers. You know, you've got to put 6 inches of free dirt that they dug out to make the hole in the first place. But after a day, 2 days, you've sold a foot of airspace, and in 6 days, you've given up a whole yard of airspace. I said, well, what if we just took that slurry and sprayed it on the face of the landfill and used it as an alternate daily cover, maybe an inch thick? Over the course of a year, you'll save hundreds of cubic yards of airspace that you can sell. And so that's the background for what I'm going to show you here. And the state of Michigan approved this technology. Now, I will admit there's only one landfill that's so far approved to use this technology. But I assume I hit the green button. All right. I already said all that. I said all that. Here is the beautiful thing about being a chemist and not an engineer. This is even better than what I drew on a piece of paper. And I said to an engineer friend of mine, okay, I got a landfill, I got a stick going through an RO, and the water comes out, and this, for me, is all I need. Engineers need a little more detail than this to make it actually function. But this is the basic schematic. Pumping 100,000 gallons out a day, running it through a huge RO system. And by the way, I've also done this on foam frac, and I've also done this on thermal systems. It's just concentrating the PFAS that's in the original volume of water. There are several technologies that I've done this technology on, but this happens to be an RO system. And there it is. That's where the little beastoids, the 10,000 gallons of concentrate per day, reside. And from there, it was typically pumped right back in to the landfill. What I'm going to describe is, please don't blame me for this name, but it was used for environmental purposes and it sets up. So my former employer decided that they loved the name EnviroSet. It's got to be Enviro something in our business, right? So this is EnviroSet. Now I will say right off the bat that sack there of EnviroSet, it's a proprietary pozzolanic blend, which just means it's cement-based, but it's not pure cement. I found by trial and error that straight cement wasn't the best way to go, so I blended other goodies into it that the cement plants would have. And we sell in the industry by the ton, and we treat things by the ton and by the tens of thousands of gallons. It's a different type of technology than a lot of they're presented here, a lot of cool technologies. But this is done on a very large macro scale, or it can be. In that super sack is a pre-weighed ton of pre-blended EnviroSet. This is for the field trial. This is to demonstrate how we got about doing it. But that represents approximately 1 ton. And at a cement plant on a scale, if you get plus or minus 1/10 of a ton, you're doing really good. So we're not making silicon chips here. But this is approximately and pretty closely 1 ton of EnviroSet. And based upon my bench testing, which I'll describe in a little bit, we needed, for 1 ton of EnviroSet, we needed approximately 1 ton of concentrate. By mass, it was about 1 to 1. So we go, okay, sidebar. 45 years in the cement industry, okay? I'm very sensitive about this. You see that truck? From this day forward, do not call it a cement truck. This is a ready-mix concrete truck. So we got a ready-mix concrete truck, which of course is a very nice mixer. The leachate concentrate has already been put into the truck. The EnviroSet, which is pre-measured, is being put into that truck, so you get a good agitation, a good mixer. And from there, You can see the concrete truck mating with the spray truck. On the upper left, the slurried material is going down that slough into this spray truck. And the spray truck has got this little spray gun. It looks like an anti-aircraft gun or some sort of thing like that. And this, I'm going to show you two different trials just briefly in here. The first trial, we wanted to spray it on the side of a hill with about a 30-degree angle to it, because we wanted to see whether it would adhere or whether it would just slough off. So this, again, you're looking at the first of its kind. We wanted to see, before we started spraying it on the face of the landfill, we wanted to see how it would perform. And so the first couple, there's two little areas here where we had two different mix designs. I had started off with 42 mix designs and narrowed it down to two that seemed to work the best on bench tests encapsulating the PFAS in the concentrate. So you'll see two here. The one on the left, and both of these are, again, about a 30-degree angle. These are two different mix designs. They both perform pretty well. They do a little bit of sloughing off. Have you ever been forewarned about what you put on the internet or in an email? I am convinced there are people at the formerly known Wholesome, now Amrize Cement, who think this stuff is actually called PFAS. So I had a little fun with a colleague of mine. I had gloves on when I did my hand imprints, and I wrote PFAS, and I sent it to my I thought friend at Wholesome, and pretty soon this was all over the Wholesome email chains. And so I decided, well, darn it, I'm just going to run with it. So the one on the right is officially in the Wholesome or Amrize archives as PFAS. And the sad thing is some people think that's really what it's called. But anyways, both of these show the demonstrations, whether it would adhere to the side or slough off. Now we knew that it would stick. So this is it being applied. You can see, like I say, it looks like a little anti-aircraft gun. The slurry you saw, the ready-mix concrete truck slurried the stuff up, put it into the spray truck. Now I will say this, if you ever want to use this technology, I would suggest that once it's in the truck, you spray it. Because the whole purpose of this stuff is to set up. And you don't want it to set up inside your little anti-aircraft gun there. You want it to set up on the surface. This is about 15 minutes later. Instead of putting 6 inches of soil on top of this, this was approved by the state of Michigan to do this as an alternate daily cover. So instead of having 6 inches of dirt on top of it, we've only taken up about an inch of airspace. And this is after 15 minutes. It's very tacky. In about 24 hours, it's peanut brittle. And they wanted to make sure, the landfill operators wanted to make sure that this was not air and water tight. They wanted to breathe. They wanted to be able the water to pass through it, and it's not, obviously. And when the compactors ran over it the next day, of course, it gets all crunched up. While it's sitting there, it is hardening, getting harder, getting harder, getting harder, and I'll address the bench testing in a little bit. For the last 20 years, I've probably encapsulated PFAS unwittingly for the last decades, but I'm doing it on purpose for 9 years. But for more than 20 years, I've been using EPA method 1310B. It's called the structural integrity test, and it's a soil cement test specific. I don't get to pick my methodology. This is about as close as I could find, and multiple states and EPA have accepted my data from this process that I'm about to describe. It's a little cylinder. It's about 7 centimeters tall, about 3 centimeters across. It has about 80 square centimeters of surface area, and that's going to represent my full face of the landfill for that course of the day. But it's cured for 30 days. You take it out, you put it in that little compactor. Whether it fractures or not, you send that sample to the laboratory. If you got a really strong sample, that monolith will remain. Or if it fractures, you send the monolith plus its pieces for an SPLP extraction. SPLP extraction, not a TCLP. I've done side-by-side samples of these little monoliths, and I found that SPLP slightly extracts more PFAS than does the TCLP, whose only function is a one-time determination whether something's hazardous or not. It's not a performance test. Anybody know that the purpose of the SPLP was to supposedly simulate 100 years exposure to acidified rain? That's the history of the thing. I am not a fan of leaf, and again, being retired, it allows you to loosen up your tongue and express yourself a little bit more. I'm not a fan of leaf. I've been on over 500 sites, contaminated sites, and not a single one of them is sitting in distilled water. Not one of them. Nor have I been to a site, any of those 500 sites, that is exposed to the full range of the pH scale. But it is rained on. It's going to get rained on. If you do in situ stabilization, it will get rained on. So my argument has been, and it's seemed to hold up, is that the SPLP is probably the best way to demonstrate leachability. I put this in here too. It gives us an idea. Typically, those little cylinders that you saw, if they don't fracture, they're at 10 to minus 7 to 10 to minus 8 centimeters per second as far as hydraulic conductivity. I know my geo friends balk and get upset when I say that it's impervious or impermeable. I guess granite isn't even impermeable. But at 10 to minus 7 or 10 to minus 8 centimeters per second, pretty dang close. And that little monolith can only give off PFAS or any of the little ugly nasties that's in there on the surface. The core of that little monolith that you saw isn't leaching anything. Leaching only occurs at the surface. So, let's go here. Oops, how do I go back? This is very typical data, by the way. I took, in this particular case, this particular one, the 3 congeners of PFAS that stood out on this particular as received results. And you can see the SPLP extraction of those little mini monoliths that you had seen did a pretty good job of reducing the leachability. I do nothing to the chemistry of it. I just encapsulate them. I trap them, entrap them. And there's a site number 2. So I'm covered, blanketed with NDAs, as you can imagine. So I'm assuming that site 1 and site 2 do not identify where these came from, but these are leachates from different landfills. And you can see the results are pretty nice. That you can go reduce, and I'll show some other data that shows even a higher or a more reduction. Let's look at this one. As received, 1.5 million PFOA. So you go 10 to the 6 to 10 to the 2. There's a 4 orders of magnitude reduction. Now, remembering that this is all being done inside the landfill, so anything that does leach, and this represents 100 years of exposure to acidified rain, not a single day or a single year. I didn't make up the rules. That's what SPLP allegedly is showing us. So there's a 4 order of magnitude reduction in the PFOA, and really cool on the one at the bottom. Nothing detected at all in the leachate from the SPLP extraction of the monolith. I'm repeating myself, but most of you never seen this, so I want to give you an idea what it's from. This one, I put it in here, it's called ADC Light, because I had a landfill customer say, well, dang, I don't have to go to non-detect. So if you don't go to non-detect, it's a less robust mix, which means it doesn't cost as much. And so I wanted to put this one in here. These 2 are alternate daily cover light, my technology, or my naming of it. So we can go to non-detect if we want to with a more robust mix, or we can make it a little less robust, and it still is containing a lot of the PFAS in the alternate daily cover that's sitting on top of the trash. And here, where have I got? This technology does not selectively encapsulate PFAS. Whatever is in the concentrate gets encapsulated. So I had a landfill operator say to me, well, what about fill in the blank? What about chromium? What about arsenic? But now the heavy metals I've known from historically doing a lot of contaminated sites, soil and sludges and others, that all heavy metals. Anybody remember your solubility rules from chemistry? If you went to the University of Michigan and took chemistry, I was a professor there for 10 years as well, we teach you the solubility rules. Oh, U of M, the guys who just won the national championship? those guys. Anyways, solubility rules. Anybody remember there was something called the solubility rules? What forms an insoluble precipitate in a soluble aqueous solution, and most hydroxides are insoluble. Arsenic, lead, cad, chromium, zinc, pick your favorite heavy metal. They form an insoluble hydroxide when exposed to a high pH material. And this stuff's 12 to 13 when you see it. So you can see that other things are also encapsulated and not allowed to leach when they are encapsulated with Enviroset. No. You can read all of this stuff, but typically our reduction is 3 to 5 orders of magnitude in the as is received versus what will leach out into the landfill if it is treated with the Enviroset. And one of the things that I never understood was this endless recycling of the concentrate and putting it right back into where it came from. Because all you're doing is concentrating whatever is present there in the first place. Yes, it has been approved in the state of Michigan, and this is the obligatory bio thing. And a soon-to-be former friend of mine asked me why I used my high school graduation picture for this particular presentation. It's the best I got. So I do have the contact information on there now. As I say, I'm no longer with Geocycle or Wholesome, which doesn't really exist, or Amrise. I'm with my own little company called Pet Soil, and the information is there. And I don't know, you can do general questions and all, or? Okay. I still got a couple minutes left, so if you got any specific questions for me, or after we're done, I'll be glad to elucidate, as will the other panelists, I'm sure. Any immediate questions you'd like to throw at me? Yes, in the back, sir. Oh, Gene's got a microphone. There you go.
All right, thank you. I was just wondering if that landfill, I was looking at how high those numbers were, and I was wondering, is that like typical? I mean, is that typical leachate numbers, or is that because it was recycling? Are you seeing those kind of numbers that high in other landfills
yes.
that don't recycle, for example?
The short answer is I have seen anything from 50 to 100,000 gallons a day of raw leachate before it's treated, either through an RO or a foam frac or thermal or a combination of the above. The landfills that I've worked on, yes, those are typically the volumes. Is that what you're asking me, the volumes of raw?
Not the volumes, the concentration of the PFAS.
Oh, the concentrations.
Yes.
They're all over the map. It all depends, we all know, or should know, I guess, that it depends on what goes into the landfill. You know, some that are more heavily industrialized, like where I am in Michigan, there's a lot of heavy industry. There seems to be more than there might be in some that are in other locations. Depends on what's going into the landfill as to whether or not you're going to get as much PFAS. It's all over the map. I don't know if that answers your question, but I've seen.
I got you. If you had to give a range, if you just had to pick a landfill at random and give a range, what would you say?
I don't pick anything at random. I get asked to come in and do stuff, so
Okay.
I'm randomly picked, I guess. So.
Okay. Thank you.
A bit of a follow-up question to that. Could you tell us, is there a RCRA subtitle C or D landfill?
I'm sorry.
That you took?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Was it a RCRA subtitle C landfill that typically takes hazardous waste, or was it something that was subtitle D that took household waste and maybe some industrial waste prior to that?
This was a general municipal waste type landfill, the source that I'm showing here.
Okay, municipal.
Permitting. What variables did you use to convince Michigan to permit this cover?
Well, I'd like to say brilliant science, but that wouldn't be exactly true. Michigan is one of the more aggressive states, Minnesota, North Carolina, some others are getting pretty aggressive. And so the industry is saying back to them, okay, then you've got to approve some technology to help us accomplish what it is you want us to accomplish. And we were able to demonstrate through the leaching data that this would grossly reduce the mass loading of PFAS going back into the landfill. This was not just you send in an application. I mean, this was a 18-month process to get to that point. But repeated bench tests, 2 very successful field trials that they were there to observe, to see how it was done. And it was not an overnight approval, but if you're going to regulate people, you got to allow them to demonstrate compliance. And this was something that seemed to satisfy the waste management folks anyways in the state of Michigan. So, I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. I mean, it was literally an 18-month process, though. This was not a one-time, one set of data, okay, you guys are great, go. I don't know if that helps at all, but that was how it went.
I'm assuming it was a stage permitting process
Yes.
through pilot studies and a proposal of sorts to try a trial.
Yeah, this was a process. This was a process. But, you know, we achieved the goal, so that's, I guess, the ultimate. Anything else for me? Oh, the one gentleman here, and give the other panelists an opportunity to speak as well.
Yeah, did you have to get any, did the permitting authority permit the light version, or was there any?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the whole question.
Yeah, did the permit include the light version?
No.
Okay.
No, it was, no. The light, no. ADC Light was another landfill looking at this in another state. No, it was not. It was the big daddy. It was the really good reduction in no. ADC Light was not approved.
Another question is, was it Paul Screeja who you worked with?
Say again?
Paul Screeja. He was with ROCOM at that time. When,
where are you from?
I'm with SWANA, Director of Applied Research, and we published a report in 2022.
He's one of my best friends.
That's what I thought. Anyway, PFAS management and treatment options for landfill leachate. And back in 2022, we described your project as very promising. And I think they need this in Europe too, because they're having the same problem with
Let's discuss that off camera. And yes, but you're correct. That's who it is.
One over here.
I have a question for Jenny
There you go.
from CDM Smith. So you mentioned that you use a stormwater treatment to remove the PFAS. You used constructed wetland to do that. Question number one is that where is this project? How can you get this permitted if that's in Florida? Also, what is the efficiency use that constructed wetland to remove the PFAS? I feel that's I'm very interested in that because we are one of our wastewater treatment plant treating the leachate. I assume we have a high concentration of PFAS in the effluent. If we can do the same, just like you mentioned, I thought that would be a very efficient way to do it if that works.
Yeah, great question. So this, the sediment basin cap was in the northeast, and we didn't select plants for that cap, but we're also thinking of modifying our southeast R&D project to have a floating wetland at the intake. And so we haven't gone through a permitting process because it was with the utility itself, and we talked to the engineers, and the only permitting for that sedimentation basin is to keep a specific volume, and they had probably like 20 times the volume in that pond for us to apply a cap in. And then for the R&D project, it's R&D, and we're just trying to figure out if we are able to make a dramatic difference in the PFAS concentrations. But I know CDM Smith has a pilot construction wetland in North Florida. I'm not sure if it's specifically for PFASs, and I know Dr. Townsend's lab at the University of Florida, Dr. Drayton Lott, is a postdoctoral student, and he did his dissertation on a treatment wetland for PFASs, and I can send you that paper. And I think there were some interesting results, and that pilot is also ongoing because they are trying to treat landfill leachate through a constructed wetland, and it's really interesting work. And so if you want to reach out to Dr. Townsend and are interested, he would love to probably give you a tour and what they have learned with that project.
I'm sorry. So in state of Florida, we have a new stormwater rule to permit the stormwater pond. So if we have to add the PFAS treatment, then regular stormwater pond permitting for ERP, we are required to remove nitrogen and phosphorus. So if we add the PFAS into it, that's going to be require another treatment facility, or can we combine it to treat all nitrogen, phosphorus, and PFAS all together?
Great question. And so, yeah, 100%, if you have to build a sedimentation or stormwater pond, putting in a floating wetland or a combination of the technologies that are discussed, the literature has shown really promising results. And so if the stormwater pond outlet and contaminants have to get down to a certain level, that's probably your most practical, cost-effective way to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny, I know you mentioned Dr. Townsend. I think he's also doing a research project right now on the flaring at a landfill and the release of PFAS through the flaring process, because evidently the flaring's not destructing the PFAS evidently completely. So
yeah, it's a great lab and research coming out of Florida, and they kind of identified that PFAS are volatilizing from landfills, and it's really interesting work. So,
any other questions? All right, Michael.
On your first case study, you had basins, and then of course you had various chambers and so forth, and you had some significant reductions through these chambers. Now, it looked like it was a small scale, so I'm assuming there would be a frequency exchange or replacement of that media. Is that proposed in this first study or not?
Great question. So the first pilot was in the Midwestern United States, treatment of soils within 3 cells. And it was a pilot to determine, okay, once we go full scale, we will probably do the 18 inches of Rembine at 2% concentration. And right, like adsorptive technology is not permanent. It can be competitive absorption can exist, and so PFAS could eventually leach if the breakthrough capacity hits. And so, yes, down the line, you would have to performance monitor the treatment system, and if you're seeing breakthrough, then yeah, you would want to do something about it. Most likely have to dig it up and then either treat it like the slide that I recommended, hauling off-site using smoldering, SQO, other technologies like that to destruct, and you'll have to redo it. So again, there's no permanent technology that can fix it all. There's always maintenance.
Yeah, have you determined that frequency?
I haven't looked. We've done the bench scale and pilot scale studies to determine that Rembine was the most practical, but I'll have to talk to that project team to see if that is within their plan. Or are they still just in the pilot phases of like, okay, we now know 18 inches, let's go ahead and see with this amount of Rembine within the system how much it will take to break through.
Thank you.
Hey, I have a question for Aquagga, specifically Emily Harper. Your portion of it. Just clarification, in case I missed it, I apologize, but at the end you had presented your treatment train of HALT, foam fractionation, and then GAC, and then you had reported it was either PFOS or PFOA, where it was 5 ppm, and then it got reduced down to ultimately, I think your kind of limit was 87 nanograms per liter. Was that the results of just the HALT process before foam fractionation and GAC, or even after the entire treatment train process, you could still only get that PFOS down to 87 nanograms per liter?
Yeah, so that was the full treatment train in of itself, but we've done like demonstrations and installations where we are able to still hit like 99.9% regardless of what the influent is. So yeah, we'll be able to hit those numbers regardless.
And so is that due to, once you kind of hit the 87, was that carbon breakthrough? So, you know, if you wanted to ultimately get down to 4, you could have kept recirculating it through carbon exchange if you wanted to, but that wasn't the goal. Is that what was presented?
Yes, correct. We
Okay.
were limited on like time and things like that. So yes, we could have hit that. Mhm.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
This is for HALT. What power source were you using as far as kW, voltage, and amperage?
Yeah, we use about 480 voltage, and we have a couple like ways that we can do it. We can either like install into like an actual power grid, or we also have like a transformer that we'll send out with our container as well. That is a great question for our engineers.
Total kilowatt. Sales guy answered. Oh, is it working? Oh, sorry. Total kilowatt hours, I don't know, but the systems run at between 0.5 and 1 kilowatt hour per gallon of concentrated fluid treated. So that's the spec.
All right, if I hear no other questions, I'm going to ask you all to give a round of applause for our final presenters. And speaking of round of applause, I don't know where Ralph went, but I got to give a shout out to Tim and Ralph at the AV guys. Imagine having to sit through all these presentations for the last 2 days and not be involved in the industry. Thank you, appreciate it, guys. All right, wrapping up, I will get proceedings out this coming week. It's not going to be today nor this weekend because I'm going to go drink beer. I'll try to get them out by Wednesday, latest by Friday. It really depends on, I'm going to try to do it out in one email because I know you all get enough emails from me. So I will, the presentations are already shot to PDF, but I want to get the YouTube channel up. So and that takes a little bit of time for the upload. So everybody have a safe trip back. And I'll be surveying everybody to figure out what we do, whether we do this again. Next year, hold off a year. One idea is to perhaps merge it in with the remediation conference and run, you know, both events back to back. So, but that would be 27. So with that, thank you. Everybody have a safe trip home.